Welcome to the Horror Story channel. If you have horror stories you like to share, please email to khmirlb@yahoo.com. A few months after my wife inherited a trust, I stood up to someone who visibly clenched up as soon as he entered my line of sight, then assaulted me after calling him out with a curt nod in front of multiple witnesses and security cameras. A security guard came afterwards and asked if I wanted to make a police report, but I declined. Seemingly overnight, the rougher demographics of the community began to act more vigilant and menacing towards me. Because I didn't know who he was, until I recognized him getting indicted on the news a year later as crime boss Mike Miska, I called on several family members to help protect my loved ones. My uncle-in-law, who I euphemistically refer to as Murray Franklin, offered to come help us fly out of the state. I started to feel like myself again once we boarded the plane. I was about to leave this disaster behind. Then Murray Franklin called attention to us by loudly making fun of my sense of insecurity regarding our safety. One nearby passenger stood up to get a good look at us. I had a sinking feeling as the plane took off. Could this follow us? I've been in a state of limbo. Only recently I thought it strange. The in-laws never expressed any interest, let alone concern or even passing curiosity in such a life-threatening event that could have subsequent ramifications. A few days after arrival, Murray Franklin and his wife came to make an unsolicited presentation of their enduring love for us and how any past feuds were water under the bridge. It was inexplicably generous, given my incompatible history with them, and sounded scripted, devoid of emotion, and felt awkward. I reiterated my concerns for our safety, but there was no response. We tentatively stayed in vacation rentals until eventually renting from a family friend. One day, I caught the next-door neighbor pointing an old-school camera with a huge zoom lens at the house. The glare of sunlight must have prevented him from seeing me through the window, and I recorded him with my phone. Then on another occasion, I heard the patio door close when I was alone in the house. Imagine how that would feel after dealing with a crime boss. The thing is, the family friend would also show up unannounced on the pretense of retrieving his items, had a security camera recording us inside, and then for gently complaining about his email picture being a portrait of his crotch with his devil's horn hand symbol pointing at it, he kicked us out during the COVID moratorium ban on evictions, knowing I had a very bad cough. All illegal, so I documented these with visual evidence and prepared to take him to court. I shared my intentions with Murray Franklin because he had previously claimed not to be that close with his family friend and that he would not take sides in the issues we were having. It seemed to slowly dawn on him that I wasn't going to let the family friend walk over us, and suddenly he was adamant that we'd get in big trouble if I stood on my tenant's rights. He would pause, clearly thinking of what to pull out of his hat next, like blurting out, "Don't do it, he's lawyered up." Murray Franklin has been known to track us with detectives, private investigators, and once even mentioned doing so. He used to work for the city, so he has the right connections. He's also the treasurer of a local charity. One relative from an older generation had married a Freemason. The family friend showed up with a big folder, which I suspect to be Murray Franklin's treasure trove of dirt on me. Because a deputy strangely asked me alone for ID as we all entered the courtroom, then I was arrested the next day for a supposed out-of-state warrant. Well, it must have been a pigshit one because they released me the next day without explanation. Until this incident, we were set to buy a property through their family friends. Afterwards, the trust suddenly had concerns about our ability to manage a property. I wonder who shared such concerns with them. We broke off with the in-laws after that. Murray Franklin must really love us as family because he pursued us with several unhinged emails. In one, he told my wife that I don't really love her and am only there for the trust, despite the fact that I have been with her before that for years through thick and thin. Another ranted ominously about CPS in an exaggerated caricature of African American speech. He acts like he knows everything about me since even before the Miski incident, but I can count on both hands the number of times we've interacted in person, and most of that was after. It seemed the more open I've been in approaching him, the more fake he becomes. He's also made the baseless claim in the past that I must be on hard drugs. My suspicions have become impossible to ignore. I had been depicting my experience in videos over time, using analogous movie scenes to symbolically represent events for which I had no actual footage. When I recently put them together in the right chronological order on my YouTube channel, they told a shockingly obvious story, and I was finally able to see the big picture. Murray Franklin had gotten me arrested for challenging his family friend. The family friend and probably neighbor had been invading our privacy on his behalf. We've been broken into several more times over the last few years, and there are records of that. For example, we came home one night to a car parked in our driveway. I contacted the property owner, but he didn't know anything about it. Then I found the front door was not fully closed. Upon searching online, I found that it's a common tactic to leave a vehicle in the driveway to make residents hesitate and allow intruders more time to escape. The next day, I observed someone retrieve the vehicle. It was the next-door neighbor. I had thought the break-ins were because the economy was hard due to the pandemic, but that may not be the case because nothing was taken. I guess they didn't find the drugs a demented Murray Franklin informed them of, because guess what? I'm not on drugs. He's out to destroy me with slander, including lies such as that, and to create legal and financial pitfalls for us to fall into. He wants to ruin us, to break us apart, to make people think we are crazy and incapable, thinking another disaster will force her to come home to him with the trust so that he can power of attorney it, preferably without me around. Their family has a history of power of attorney and mental illness. If Mike Miska had made me disappear, it may have accomplished the same goal faster and in line with the same strategic pattern. There is also a curious vacuum of information regarding my wife's father, who apparently died in a crash not long after being accused of abusing her mother. Whatever the case may be, he is playing a one-sided mind game with us that we don't want any part of. He recently fished for our location by saying he had some mail to forward, and we told him yes, the P.O. box is still the same. It's a P.O. box because we know by now what he's up to and we don't want him in our business anymore. Then a couple of weeks later, he emailed us a random interesting article by amazing coincidence about the very city we're in. I think he's setting up one more attempt to attack us from behind the scenes because I'm becoming aware of his underhanded tactics and speaking out about them. He has also started right to an email address which I have not shared with him. He must have thought I would stay shook forever. Moving away from him messed up his plans to dictate my downfall with his delusional bureaucracy in his neat little community. He had to involve more people in vain who may not appreciate being overextended. He didn't realize I may have been flying on the radar after brushing shoulders with Mike Miska. His covert campaign must have cost him a fair amount of money. I have to wonder whether he siphoned from the trust, perhaps, by misappropriating some of the residual estate. I remember when we briefly shared a rental with his son over 10 years ago. I caught him about to cheat us out of a couple $100 with some sleight of hand transaction over something like the utilities or deposit. He was so casual and not at all apologetic about it, like he was perfectly entitled to get over on us. Before that, he also mentioned something about watching out for cops coming to serve a summons because he owed the bank. After he left the rental arrangement and we took over the entire unit, I remember seeing a slit above one of the front door shades that was just slightly more depressed than the others. It was right around eye level, and you could see outside through it.